All right, let's talk about the Phils and the Eagles with our next guest. He covers the Eagles and the entire NFL. He also happens to be a huge Phillies fan, and Sheil Kapadia does tremendous work with The Ringer, and he joins us every single Wednesday during the football season. Sheil, good morning, bud.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Doing all right, Sheil.
Got a lot of consternation here. A lot of people arguing and yelling at each other today. That's all right. So, Sheil, let's start Eagles, then we'll go Phils. Who are they going to get? Who should they get? Who shouldn't they get? Who are they going to get? Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? A lot of openings. What do you make of what's going on right now?
Yeah, it is the hardest time to predict that I can ever remember where coaches are going to land in the NFL because of 10 openings around the league. So now you have these guys like, Brian Daboll and some of these other guys who are looking around saying, well, I'm going to interview for head coaching jobs before I take an OC position. And so you have these teams that are just looking for an offensive coordinator. They're kind of sitting around waiting and saying, well, we don't want to pull the trigger on someone just to have someone. We want the best candidate. So there are a lot of moving parts here. I think Daboll seems like maybe the most likely guy when I look at a guy who would be available, who they would like. Now, I'm not the biggest Brian Daboll guy. I was not impressed with what he did with the Giants. Daniel Jones leaves there and all of a sudden looks like a really good quarterback with the Colts. So I'm a little hesitant with all the Brian Daboll buzz. I think he plays the media game really well and he gets a lot of pubs, but you look at the results and when he hasn't had Josh Allen, it hasn't been great. So that's one guy, if you say most likely. A guy I would look at.
Well, hold on. What about before you move on? What about the opportunity that exists now in Buffalo? How much does that work against the Eagles? We've heard that Daboll is now their top choice, but there's a head coaching spot in Buffalo where he was OC. Is it now, holy cow, almost a moot point that we want him because it feels like a slam dunk job up there?
I don't think it's a slam dunk. I think it's possible. I think you're right about that. Yeah, but I think they will look at more candidates. Now, they have a familiarity with him, and they also have a familiarity with the next guy I was going to mention, which is Joe Brady, who was the Bills' offensive coordinator the last couple of years here, coached at LSU before. He's a guy who's a little bit more interesting to me than Brian Daboll. I think he's someone the Eagles have had in before. I think when they were interviewing for head coaches, he's coached in different places. He has the college background, but also the NFL background. So it's tough. I thought Mike McDaniel would be a really good candidate. They didn't even get him in for an interview from what it looks like here. And
what does that say?
It's a great question.
Is that suggesting, that this OC job is less attractive than expected?
I mean, it could say a number of different things. And so some of the possibilities are a guy like McDaniel just looks at it and says, where do I have a greater chance to succeed? Hey, I'm going to go to the Chargers where they don't have an offensive coach. They're going to give me the keys. I think there's potential there with the quarterback. They kind of underachieved. He could look at it that way. It could be something where, does he have familiarity with people in the building, with the coaches, with the front office? Does he say, man, in Philadelphia, that's a pressure cooker. If I don't go there and win a Super Bowl, who knows? I might be out of there in a year. So, I don't know exactly what it says, but it's certainly interesting to me that he had options, different options, head coaching potentially opportunities, and certainly OC opportunities. And by all the reporting, I think it was Jeff Darlington of ESPN reported, no, he was a top target of the Eagles, and they didn't even get him in the building.
So, Sheil, I think the pressure cooker comment you just made there is not a flyby. I think it's a big thing. I'll give you two things. And I'm joking a little bit with James today, but all jokes aside, James giving the Phillies an F in an offseason when they sign a 56 home run hitter shows that there's passion and I would say at times irrationality. And then, as we know factually, people egg the last coordinators home. So, when there's 10 different openings or such, other spots can be more appealing just on life, happiness, and balance and those kind of things. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's some truth to it. Now, I could make the other case that offensive coordinators, if you coach in Philadelphia and do a good job, you're going to get a head coaching job. It's a well-respected organization. There's pressure in a lot of markets around the NFL. You don't become an NFL head coach because you're scared of that pressure. So it really depends on the personality and the factors. Now, I will say something we've talked about before. The Eagles are run differently than other organizations in the NFL. We know how they're run. It's Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. They're going to be calling the shots. They're going to be making all the big decisions in the organization, whether that's personnel, whether that's coaching staff, whether that's analytics, whether that's training staff. And so that's not how it works everywhere in the NFL. And they've had a lot of success doing that. They've won 2 Super Bowls in the last 10 years, but that's something that people might not be used to as well.
Right. The big name guys, if they take head jobs, who are some other names that we can look to? I mean, who should we be targeting if it's not Brian Daboll, if he takes something else? I was encouraged just looking at some of the names like Davis Webb, the things that he's done for a 30-year-old, a guy who just recently retired, Nate Scheelhaus, some of the up-and-comers. Are there any that you like in particular, Sheil?
Yeah, it's tough because I want an OC who can come in and really challenge Jalen Hurts and get him out of his comfort zone and get Nick Sirianni out of his comfort zone and really bring new ideas to the table. So I look at some of the younger guys, like, there was this report about Charlie Weiss Jr., who was the Ole Miss OC and now the LSU OC. And I look at it and I say, he's done a lot of interesting things in college. Schematically, he could be a really fun guy to bring in, but he's 32 years old and he hasn't been an OC in the NFL. And so I look at some of these names and I have questions really about a lot of them. I mean, Bobby Slowick is another guy who is a little bit interesting to me. A year ago or 2 years ago, he was viewed as an up-and-comer, a rising star. He was the Texans offensive coordinator with C.J. Stroud, who had a great rookie season. And then year 2 went horribly. They fired him. And C.J. Stroud didn't get better after that. So you could really
quite the opposite. He looked completely lost in this postseason as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So you could make the case that, hey, it wasn't the coach there, and maybe he's a guy deserving of a second chance. But if you're looking for a slam dunk, you want me to say this is the guy they got to go out and get. The way this is unfolded, I don't know. It hasn't unfolded in a great way where I really see that guy.
Yeah. Sheil, people aside, meaning individual names we could reference, I want to give you 2 profiles. I want you to tell me which one you think's better for the Eagles. Profile 1 is a 35 to 40-year-old that Howie and Lurie and Nick, if he's involved, think is an A candidate. 35 to 40, he's an A as they perceive it. Profile 2 is a 60-year-old who they think is a B plus to an A minus. Which would you rather hire?
Give me the A. I want the better candidate. If you're looking for a new OC after you get to the Super Bowl, so be it. This is their window. They've got players right now, and I wouldn't be looking too far ahead saying, hey, we want someone who can stick around for a while. Now, if you do hire the 35 to 40-year-old, I want to make sure that you're looking at the staff saying, who's our quarterbacks coach? Let's build a pipeline so that if this guy ends up getting a head coaching opportunity, we have someone who we feel really good about promoting, who knows the scheme, who knows the system, who knows the players. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Ideally, that would be fantastic to have a guy for 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. But I'm looking at, they said it in their post-game press conference. We believe we can win. We can win now, and that's the priority. And I think they're right about that.
Realistically, how involved is Nick Sirianni in this offensive coordinator search by your estimation? And how much does that, impact the way that we're perceived? I mean, I guess you covered that a little bit. We are set up differently than other teams. Does that make us look a certain way through this process looking for an OC?
Yeah, it feels like the organization might be pretty sensitive to this. That's just looking at kind of that press conference with Howie Roseman stumping for Nick Sirianni and some of the messaging coming out of the building. I mean, listen, if you're asking me who I think is making this hire, I think it's Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. Now, if Nick Sirianni says, I hate this guy and I don't want him anywhere near me, maybe they have a conversation. But no, I mean, Nick Sirianni will be involved, as much as, hey, he can be in on the interviews and meet the guy and maybe if there's a tiebreaker or something. But I think, we saw what happened when Nick Sirianni picked his offensive coordinator. It did not lead to positive results. And so we saw what happened the last time this occurred with the organization, and Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie take over. And again, I'm not saying that as a negative. They have hired good people. They hired Vic Fangio, and they got you to a Super Bowl. But I do think that's how it kind of works here.
Sheil Kapadia from The Ringer with us, as he is every Wednesday. All right, Sheil, let's get to the baseball front. So you cover football, but you're a baseball fan and you're a Phillies fan. I want to play two pieces of audio and get your reaction to some notable things that were said yesterday. First, we'll start with Dave Dombrowski on the big free agents, and he's telling you don't expect anybody else. Here's something he said yesterday.
There's some big free agents still out on the market. You do not expect to seriously engage in those guys, Framber Valdez, Bellinger, those types of guys.
Well, I really can't speak to that by the baseball rules. Because they're free agents. But I just say I think we're content where we are at this point.
All right, Sheil, I want you to holster your thoughts on that because now I want to play Rob Thompson, something he said, and then get your reaction to both. Here's Rob Thompson yesterday dismissing or really disagreeing with the concept that the Phillies are not running it back.
We're going to have 3 new relievers. We got a new right fielder. We're going to put Crawford. Crawford's going to get every chance to play. We probably got a rookie starting pitcher. Painter. We got Otto Kemp, who wasn't here at the start of last year. So we're turning over 20 to 25% of our roster. So if you think that's turning it back or running it back, whatever the saying is, yeah, I can't help you.
I should have said dismissing the notion that they are running it back. I said it backwards. Sheil, what is your reaction to what you heard and what it all means?
Yeah, I think they are. They are running it back. I mean, you're talking about the outfield. And Garcia is probably as close to Nick Castellanos as you can get in Major League Baseball. It's been one of the worst hitters in baseball the last couple of years. And Justin Crawford, if he gives you league average center field play, it's a big win. So yeah, I understand the disappointment from the fan base. I get it. Now I will say this: they did win 96 games last year, and even if they're a little bit worse this year, I still think this is a playoff team. And I have sat through many seasons of Phillies baseball where it's mid-July and the team doesn't have a chance to even make the playoffs. And so I view it a little bit differently as everybody else, where I say, give me a fun summer. Kyle Schwarber hit 50 home runs. Let me go watch Christopher Sanchez pitch. And once you get into a 5-game series, they're not as good as the Dodgers. We know that. They're probably not going to win. But, I think that's how you have to kind of view this season because they didn't get better. I don't really think there's any argument that they got better with the moves they made this offseason.
Well, I agree with everything you said. I'll say this. You're right. They probably won't win that 5-game series against the Dodgers, but it doesn't mean they can't. And I think some people are too down on them. I mean,
I agree with that. They still have the starting pitching. They still have the closer. And you know what? The lineup is going to be up and down. We know that. Here's what you have to hope is that the bottom doesn't fall out this year, where all these guys who are in their mid-30s, this is the year where everybody hits the decline, everybody has injuries, and now we're talking about, hey, that run is over, and now it's a disastrous stretch. Because that season is coming at some point. I don't think it's going to be this year, but that would be kind of the worst-case scenario.
All right, Sheil, final thing. Let's address the Baseball Hall of Fame. For those that don't know, yesterday it was Carlos Beltran and Beltran, I guess I should say, right? Beltran and Andrew Jones that made the Hall. I think they both deserved it. They both got it. I mean, Andrew Jones was a wizard in center field. He was one of the truly great defensive center fielders ever and happened to be a really good hitter also. So, Sheil, here's the reality of the 4 Phillies of note, and I'm curious if you think any of these 4 should make it, not will make it, should. So Chase got 59% of the vote. That's the closest that didn't make it, and obviously he lines up to have a really good chance next year. Bobby Abreu got 30%, Jimmy got 25%, and Cole got 23%. If you were a voter, would you vote, not from your heart standpoint, but, truly your belief, would you vote for any of the 4 to make the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think Chase has a great shot, like you mentioned, with the votes there. I think Jason Stark has made the strong case for Jimmy Rollins over the years, so I'm going to go with him and say he should get in. And Cole Hamels, honestly, I haven't studied the numbers enough to know whether he passes the traditional markers that you need, but if you're asking me from an eye test, from what I remember watching him pitch and that era, I would be a yes on him too, and I would be a no on Abreu. But again, I might be wrong there on Hamels, but that's just kind of what my heart is saying from watching.
Your heart. Sheil, I love 3 of the 4. Ray, none of us can say we love Bobby Abreu, right?
No.
We can like him, but not love him.
No.
I love 3 of them, Sheil. I'd go 0 for 4 on the Hall. I just...
really?
Yeah.
You don't think Chase Utley's going to get in the Hall of Fame after this vote?
Well, what I would do.
Oh, what you would do. Okay.
Yeah, I would... look, to me, Chase follows the... not quite Don Mattingly, but to me it's similar to Don Mattingly, Will Clark, Eric Davis... These are guys that for 5 to 7 years were frickin' amazing. Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden. I mean, there is a lot of players in baseball history that for 5 to 7 years were a top 5 to 10 player in the sport, maybe the number one player, but didn't do it long enough with excellence. And I'm not happy to say I wouldn't vote for him. I'm just being honest. I wouldn't vote for him.
5 to 7 years is enough for me. You know, if you're saying 2 to 3 years, yeah, that's a 5 to 7 years of greatness where you are the best at your position in the sport. I don't know.
Chase was certainly that. I mean, look, from it'd probably be like certainly 6 to 11 and maybe 5 to 11. He was, no, you had some decline 10, 11. He wasn't quite as good as 6, 7, 8. But, for 6 or 7 years, for 6 or 7 years, he played at a Hall of Fame level for sure. And then the question is, does that get you in? So, all right, Sheil, phenomenal work, bud. We'll talk to you next week. We'll keep this thing going on Wednesdays. Thanks, pal.
Thanks,
All
Sheil.
right, guys. Take care.